Hello and welcome. Please enjoy this short readiness video on Azure Database for PostgreSQL. Hi Sai, how are you doing today?
Hi Sanjay, how's it going?
Great to have you with us.
Thank you.
So can you please tell us what are we going to talk about?
Yeah, so today we are here to talk about building multi-tenant SaaS apps using Hyperscale Citus. So that would be the story.
Okay, let's get started.
Awesome. So before I get started, a quick intro about myself. I'm Sai. I'm an engineer in the open source databases team, and my area of specialization is Postgres, and specifically Hyperscale Citus. So let's get started.
Yes, please. So let's see what's the first thing you're going to talk about. What is the scenario like?
Yeah, so what is a multi-tenant application, right? So a multi-tenant application is an application that has multiple tenants, customers, and each tenant and customer deals with its own data.
Yeah.
A classic example of a multi-tenant application is a Dynamics 365, right? A Dynamics 365 has multiple businesses who are customers to Microsoft, and each business deals with its own sales transaction data. So that's multi-tenant applications.
Okay, so basically let's start with deployment options.
Yeah, so the deployment options that Azure Database for Postgres has the single server option and then the Hyperscale Citus option. Single server option is where you can deploy a Postgres database on a single server and get all the PaaS benefits. Next is Hyperscale Citus, in which you can deploy Postgres across multiple servers and scale as your workload grows. Right, and getting into the multi-tenant aspect, right? Typically, the problems we hear from customers are threefold, right? The first is performance issues. What they hear is as the number of tenants grow, as the data size grows, and they see performance issues because of like tables not fitting in memory, indexes not fitting in memory. That is number one. Okay. Number two is more around scalability, in the sense that as they onboard more and more customers, they are worried that a single node relational database, say a Postgres or Oracle, will not scale as the workload grows. They are looking for a database that scales as the workload grows. The third is around tenant management. Yeah. So as they hit these issues of performance and scalability, what they think is they want to move their tenants to a new server and write application logic to route queries to the right servers. So basically they are looking at reinventing the wheel of sharding, which is a hard problem by itself, right? Because you need to keep a lot of distributed systems considerations in your mind, and it's not easy. It requires a lot of effort, and that's what Hyperscale Citus automates for you.
All right, so let's talk more about how do you do that?
Awesome. So before talking about how Hyperscale Citus solves these problems, let's look at the Hyperscale Citus architecture, right? So in the Citus world, you have something called as the coordinator node, and you have multiple worker nodes. Yeah. The coordinator node is the node that orchestrates your queries to the right worker nodes. The worker nodes are the nodes where the actual data exists. That's where the computation happens. Note that all of this architecture of coordinator, workers, for the end user, the client, looks and feels like a single node Postgres database. So you have the username, the password, very similar to how you connect to a Postgres database, and you run queries, right? So from the end user point of view, what you do is you connect to the coordinator node, create tables as you typically do in a Postgres database, right? So let's say we create a table called transactions, right? And then you would tell Citus that, hey, I want to shard, that is distribute this particular table on a particular column. Okay. So let's say we shard the transactions table on, say, the company ID, right? And that's what happens typically in multi-tenant applications, where the tables are sharded on the tenant ID, which is an identifier for the tenant. It could be, say, the company ID, the organization ID, or customer ID, right? So here we are sharding the transactions table on the company ID. Right? Okay. For that, Citus gives you a very simple SQL function to do the sharding. And once I run that like SQL function, right, under the covers, Citus creates shards, the blue dots that you're seeing on the screen on the workers. Shards are nothing but simple plain Postgres tables that hold a set of your data. So in this scenario, they would hold a set of your companies, right? So very important concept in multi-tenant applications is once you shard these tables on the tenant ID, right, Citus automatically makes sure that all the data for a given tenant from all the tables goes and sits on a single worker. right? So if there is a query, as you're seeing on the screen, for a particular company, then Citus routes that query to the right like worker where this company or the tenant resides and executes the query. That is number one. Number two, where if there is a query that is across tenants, right? As you're seeing here across companies, then Citus parallelizes that query across multiple machines and gives you the results. So now coming to the problems, right, of performance. So the reason like Citus solves the performance issue is because under the covers, note that these shards are smaller, right? By which like in general, your index hit rates, the cache hit rates are much better on smaller tables than the big large table on a single node database, right? Yeah. That is number one. And the second is the virtue of this parallelism, that it has the ability to run queries across multiple workers and scale your workload as the data size grows. So this is in regards to performance. Next is about scalability. So along with this, Citus also has the ability to add more worker nodes, increase your horsepower, and then rebalance the data all in an online way. So just to reiterate, the horizontal scalability piece is all online. So you don't need to take any downtime with respect to reads and writes while the horizontal scalability is kicking in. So this is how we solve the scalability problem, right? And coming to the last problem which I mentioned, which is tenant management, right? So Citus also gives you nuts and bolts to manage your tenants across the worker nodes, right? So the first is something called as Citus stat statements, which is very similar to PG stat statements in Postgres. Okay. So Citus stat statements helps you gauge tenant activity across the cluster. So it will tell you that, hey, this tenant is using your system a lot, these tenants are using the system less, by which you can identify hotspots in the database, right? That is number one. And once you identify, say, like hotspots in the database, you would think of like moving those hotspots to their own nodes. That's where you have the tenant isolation utility. So what tenant isolation utility does is it helps you isolate these large tenants that create hotspots in the database to their own worker node. And if you see, it's like a two-step process. First is you isolate the tenant to its own shard, okay, right? And then move the tenant to its own node. Right? As simple as that. I see. And note that the moving of tenant to its own node is all online. So you don't need to take any downtime with respect to reads and writes while this operation is going on. So this would be a scenario where like you have a sale happening, but there's like lots of Black Friday sale happening, right? Exactly. Lots of people coming in, so you can just simply do this whole thing. Exactly. That actually does happen. And that's around the holiday season, where customers see that, okay, I want to isolate this large tenant and give better performance and be ready for scale. So you're right. So okay, that sounds good. And then, of course, what are the benefits of building this multi-tenant applications in Azure ecosystem? So the biggest benefit is, as you see, right, like Hyperscale Citus solves the problem of scale for multi-tenant SaaS apps, and Hyperscale Citus has a very good integration story with the Azure ecosystem, right? So for example, if you see the reference architecture, you have AKS, which is compatible with Hyperscale Citus, which is Azure Kubernetes Service, and you can run like multiple app platforms like Ruby, Django, .NET on the Kubernetes service, and then you can have Azure Cache for Redis for caching purposes, and then you can also have tools such as Azure Machine Learning and Power BI hit your Hyperscale Citus database to get visibility into reporting and artificial intelligence purposes as well. So amazing dashboards. Yep, okay, absolutely. Cool. All right. Anything else in terms of resources or anything else? Absolutely. So last but not the least, before I end, just wanted to give some customer examples, right? So a couple of customers who use the service are, number one, Finastra. So Finastra is the third largest fintech company that uses Hyperscale Citus. They provide applications to banks and financial institutions to support and automate mission critical workloads. Okay. So the specific workload which they are looking at Hyperscale Citus involves an open core platform for payments and lending for close to 4,500 community market customers. So currently this customer is in the migration stage. They are very close to cutting over, and in the coming months the goal is to like cut over. Okay. That is one customer, Finastra. Next you have RelayR. RelayR is a customer that already uses Hyperscale Citus in production, and they got into production even before we went GA. So it was actually during the public preview period, and they're very happy with the product. And this application basically provides insights from existing equipments and machines and product lines to improve their overall business outcomes. So this is also a proper multi-tenant app, and as I said, like, it deals with equipments, machines. Along with the multi-tenancy piece, there is also that IoT angle in this, Sanjay. So
Okay, so IoT sensor sending information as well.
exactly. So,
Fantastic.
yeah,
Thank
that's
you
it. So-
Thank you so much for all this information. Any other final thoughts?
No, that's it. And please feel free to check out. And if there is any multi-tenant use case, right, feel free to deploy a hyperscale Citus cluster. And there are a lot of resources, technical resources out there, which actually Umur shared. And then go ahead and test hyperscale Citus. So that's it from my side.
Thank you so much for all this great information.
Awesome.
Thanks for watching this short Azure Readiness video.